The evolution of Putin's war machine. Putin's original plan collapsed within days of the February 24, 2022 invasion. Russian forces positioned for what military planners called a rapid decapitation strike against Kiev were designed to topple the Ukrainian government before Western nations could respond effectively. The initial deployment of approximately 200,000 troops represented what Moscow believed would be sufficient for a quick victory. Fast forward to 2025, and the reality on the ground tells a completely different story. Current intelligence estimates placed Russian forces at over 620,000 personnel actively engaged in Ukrainian operations, representing the largest sustained military commitment Russia has made since the Soviet era. This massive escalation reveals how fundamentally Putin's strategy has evolved from the original invasion plan. The quick strike doctrine that characterized those first weeks has transformed into something entirely different. A prolonged territorial consolidation campaign that prioritizes holding ground over rapid advances. Russian military units that once focused on speed and mobility now spend months constructing elaborate trench systems and defensive positions. The shift represents a complete reversal of initial Russian military doctrine, which emphasized rapid combined arms operations designed to overwhelm enemy forces through superior coordination and firepower. The transformation became evident through multiple mobilization waves that began in September 2022. Russia's military structure changed from a predominantly professional force to one heavily dependent on conscripted personnel. The first mobilization officially called up 300,000 reservists, but subsequent waves expanded the number significantly. By 2024, Russia was recruiting approximately 30,000 new soldiers monthly through various programs, including volunteer contracts offering substantial financial incentives. These recruitment drives fundamentally alter the character of Russian forces from highly trained professional units to mass formations with varying levels of combat readiness. Western weapon deliveries to Ukraine forced Russia to abandon its preferred combined arms tactics. Early in the conflict, Russian forces attempted coordinated attacks using tanks, infantry, and artillery working together. However, the introduction of systems like Javelin anti-tank missiles, HIMARS rocket artillery, and various air defense platforms made these tactics prohibitively expensive. Russian commanders adapted by shifting to attritional warfare strategies that rely on overwhelming firepower rather than tactical sophistication. Artillery bombardments now precede most Russian operations, with some estimates suggesting Russia fires 10 times more shells than Ukrainian forces in contested areas. The construction of defensive fortifications across occupied territories provides the clearest evidence of Russia's long-term occupation plans. Satellite imagery reveals extensive trench networks, concrete barriers, and fortified positions stretching hundreds of kilometers across the front lines. These aren't temporary fighting positions, but permanent installations designed to withstand sustained attacks. The Surovaikon line, named after former Russian commander Sergei Surovaikon, represents the most sophisticated defensive system built in Europe since World War II. Multiple defensive belts extend 20 to 30 kilometers deep in some areas, incorporating anti-tank ditches, minefields, and prepared artillery positions. Russia's defense industrial base underwent rapid expansion to sustain this prolonged conflict. Pre-war ammunition production levels proved insufficient within months of the invasion. Russian factories operating under wartime production schedules have tripled their output of artillery shells, with some facilities running continuous operations. The expansion includes converting civilian manufacturing facilities to military production and establishing new supply chains with countries like North Korea and Iran. This industrial mobilization requires massive resource allocation and demonstrates Russia's commitment to sustaining operations indefinitely. The decision to maintain this enormous military commitment stems from how Putin's inner circle framed the conflict's importance. According to intercepted communications and defector testimonies, senior Russian officials convinced Putin that Ukraine represented an existential threat to Russian statehood rather than simply a territorial dispute. Security Council meetings in late 2022 reportedly emphasized that Western support for Ukraine aimed to fragment Russia itself. This framing transformed the conflict from a limited military operation into what Russian leadership views as a struggle for national survival. Russian domestic propaganda evolved to support this massive resource expenditure through careful messaging campaigns. State media shifted from portraying the operation as a limited intervention to describing it as a patriotic war against Western aggression. Television programming now regularly features segments explaining why the conflict requires total national commitment. Opinion polls, while their accuracy remains questionable under authoritarian conditions, suggest many Russians accept the narrative that the country faces an existential threat requiring unlimited resources. Regional administrators across Russia received directives to support military recruitment and production goals. Local governments now dedicate significant portions of their budgets to supporting military families and defense contractors. Some regions established quotas for voluntary military service, creating pressure on local officials to meet recruitment targets. This coordination between federal and regional authorities demonstrates how thoroughly the war effort has penetrated Russian governmental structures. Financial commitments reflect this comprehensive transformation. Russia's military budget increased by over 70% between 2022 and 2024, representing approximately 6% of gross domestic product. These expenditures cover not only direct military costs, but also payments to military families, veteran benefits, and industrial subsidies. The scale of financial commitment makes reversing course economically devastating, creating powerful incentives to continue operations regardless of battlefield outcomes. Putin's war machine has evolved into something far beyond what anyone anticipated in February 2022.